welcome you to the session How to Write a Good Quality PhD Thesis. I am Professor Jitesh Thakkar, Dean Academics and Professor Logistics and Supply Chain Management at Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya. Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya is India's first university in transportation and logistics sector. I am ex-professor, IIT Kharagpur, and broadly contributed in the domain of industrial engineering and operations management. I would be happy to introduce you about the channel. The name of the channel is Professor Dr. Jitesh Thakkar, and currently it has two playlists: faculty and student development and logistics, supply chain and infrastructure projects. You can scan the QR code shown on the right hand side to explore the intellectual content on this channel, benefiting students, industry professionals, and faculty. About this playlist, faculty and student development, it shares the content to ensure the 360-degree development of the faculty and student in higher education institution in line with NIP 2020, broadly covering teaching effectiveness, pedagogical skills, utilization of digital technology, fostering critical thinking, promoting research excellence and productivity by providing training in research methodologies, data analysis, scholarly writing, and enhancing experiential learning through projects, internship, and exposure to real-world problems. This platform explores critical dimensions of faculty and student development for enhancing the capability and quality of most important stakeholders of higher education system, faculty and students. Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, about my university. It is a central university created in 2022 by the Act of Parliament. It is sponsored by Ministry of Railways, Government of India, and it is a mandate to contribute for the entire transportation and logistics sector, including rail, road, water, aviation, ports, and shipping, covering all three dimensions: technology, that is infrastructure; management, that is services; and policy, that is regulations. It follows demand-driven curriculum and leverages the state-of-the-art infrastructure of centralized training institutions of Indian Railways to impart most relevant industry-driven 21st century education, skilling, reskilling, executive training program at all the levels: undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD, and executive. University has a vision, innovation-led, industry-driven, to contribute in the domain of transportation and logistics sector, and it progresses with a mission based in the world, futuristic education, effective collaboration with industry and academia, and imbibe and internalize the work ethics and culture to foster lifelong learning paradigm for a developed India. University offers programs for both regular students and working professionals: BTech in Civil Engineering with specialization in Rail Engineering, BTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering with specialization in Rail Engineering. Similarly, BTech in Mechanical with specialization in Rail, BTech in Electrical with specialization in Rail, BTech in Artificial Intelligence and Data Science with specialization in Transportation and Logistics, BTech in Aviation Engineering, MBA in Logistics and Supply Chain Management, MBA in Ports and Shipping Logistics. University has a mandate to sharpen the skills of working professional in logistics and transportation sector. And in line with this, university offers programs for the working professionals in hybrid mode, digital use of digital platform, as well as the offline. So MTech in Intelligent Transport System, MTech Railway Engineering, MTech Region Tunnel Engineering, MTech Roads and Highway Engineering, MBA Logistics and Supply Chain Management, MBA Metro Rail Management, MBA Multimodal Transportation, MBA Aviation Operations Management, and PhD in Engineering, PhD in Management, with a core focus on logistics and transportation, typically for the ecosystem of multimodal logistics. This video exchanges the views on how to write a good quality PhD thesis, and many researchers they really struggle when it comes to writing a good quality PhD thesis. I'm happy to share my contributions in research. I have guided so far total 14 PhDs, majority at IIT Kharagpur. Total number of PhD theses evaluated, examined are 30. I have published 100 papers in the leading international journals. H index is 50. I'm listed in the world ranking of top 2% scientists by Stanford University. And the publications have appeared in A-star, A-grade, high impact factor journals like International Journal of Production Economics, International Journal of Operations and Production Management, Transportation Research Part D, International Journal of Production Research, Transportation Policy, Computers and Industrial Engineering, Production Planning and Control, Expert System with Applications, Journal of Cleaner Production, and Electronics Commerce Research and Applications, and many more. I have published 3 textbooks with Springer. All are international editions: structural equation modeling, project management, and multi-criteria decision making. I have contributed as associate editor of the journals International Journal of Productivity and Performance Management and Upsearch Springer. I have also contributed in the editorial board as a member for the journals Journal of Manufacturing Technology Management by Emerald, International Journal of Quality and Reliability Management by Emerald, and International Journal of Productivity and Performance Management by Emerald. This video will help you to appreciate the motivation, inspiration behind PhD thesis writing. What is a thesis? Guidelines on writing a good quality PhD thesis. Top 10 common mistakes in writing PhD thesis. And typically, I will share the sample to demonstrate what is the organization structure of PhD thesis. So the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and lighting. So this is exactly where the premise of PhD thesis sets. It is not just the reproduction of the facts or compilation of the facts. It must have a direction. It must be touching the critical and important contemporary issues and must be targeted towards adding the knowledge to the contemporary body of knowledge. So a PhD thesis is a monument to the endurance of curiosity, a testament that even the most obscure question, when pursued with relentless focus, yields a universe of its own. And it really unfolds the knowledge in a particular domain for the society, for the industry, for the nation, and for the academic fraternity at large. Look at thesis statements as an opportunity to change readers' perspectives in order to create an impact, effect, positive change. So when you are writing a thesis, you must be conscious that your reader should perceive it as an impactful document and must create a curiosity in reading, following, and adapting some of the recommendations which are emerging out of your research documented in your PhD thesis. The bad news is that many people believe that writing a thesis is hard, painful work. But let me tell you, you have already done the fun part, that is the research. It is now all about structuring. It's unlike any other document. Thesis writing is not a marketable skill. It must be in line with the scientific guidelines you have to follow and the structure depicted by your respective university or the institution. Writing a PhD thesis is like building a ship in a bottle, except the ship is made of birds. The bottle is academia, and you are not entirely sure if the ship will float. It's really a dynamic, challenging, and quite an interesting task once you have done the research. Put your research together in a directional way, interconnected way, and convert it into a very high quality PhD thesis. So, what is a thesis? Typically, a promise that you will follow through on what you say. You have committed during your registration seminar or your blueprint presentation on research what you have committed, and now you are finally delivering, which is being documented in your PhD thesis. A contract between you and your readers. It is a contract of trust, transparency between you and your stakeholders, your reader, where you are trying to project and sell your research findings. It is a commitment. How true you are to that commitment determines how effective your thesis is. So, whatever you have committed in your chapter 1 as a part of your objective, or in the chapter 2, based on the research gaps identified through literature review, and how much commitment you have shown in the subsequent chapters in pursuing those objectives rigorously, really sets a pitch and decides the effectiveness of your PhD thesis. So, once again, to reflect what is a thesis, it is the demonstration of an understanding of the state of the art, critical appreciation of existing work. You go through the contemporary literature and try to figure out that what work already has been accomplished and what are the gaps still need to be addressed. It's a novel and unique contribution. Once again, repeating, it is not just the reproduction or compilation of the facts. So it opens a new area. Please try to understand that your PhD thesis is such an important document. It opens a new area for exploration, provides unifying framework, resolves long-standing questions for society, for industry, for nation, thoroughly explores area and provides all scientific basis to accept your recommendations and inferences, contradicts existing knowledge with scientific logic and rigor, and experimentally validates theory. In addition, it produces ambitious system because now you have already researched an area and you are opening the new directions in that domain. So now it is setting the ambitious plan for the future, provides empirical data, drives superior algorithms, develops new methodology, develops new tool. All that is the contribution, and you are trying to demonstrate the enhanced discriminatory power of investigation by proposing new tools, methods, or using new algorithms, and produces some negative results, some positive results to demonstrate that what consequences this research can have for the society, for the industry, for the mankind. So there is a little confusion how long your PhD thesis should be, but please remember your thesis will not be judged by weight. Not necessary. It should be of 1,000 pages. Even across the world, it has been noticed that even Nobel laureate, they produced a PhD thesis with only 50 pages and they are awarded not only the PhD, but their work is judged of very high value for even awarding the Nobel Prize. Thesis examiners like it crisp and tight. They don't like windbags, where your findings, your facts, your claims, your assertions are very loosely binded. They want to see a very tight bound document where the flow, direction, scientific rigor, and interconnectedness of the content are appropriately ensured. So, writing a research chapter, let us see the reality check. And the reality check is you will discover holes in your research when you will start writing your chapters. Theorems you have not proved, you will come across your ignorances, and experiments you didn't run, different problems or parameters that really need to be addressed. So it's okay. But you try to mix the writing with more research, with more evidences, with the background literature, and try to position your research in terms of its uniqueness and novelty in the contemporary domain of knowledge. There is some interesting called rule of three. When you are writing each chapter, repeat yourself 3 times your most important assertions, claims, motives, objectives, the importance of the area. This could be some of the things which you may like to repeat. In introduction, we will show them how you have really addressed this issue, and conclusion we have shown. So any chapter you can visualize that you begin with introduction that will make reader understand what you want to show, we will show, and body show them by applying the scientific rigor, and conclusion we have shown. It means we have demonstrated this scientific application for the problem under investigation, and these are the recommendations of the results. Within thesis, repeat your contributions at least 3 times: introduction chapter, main chapter, and conclusion chapter. This will provide a common thread. It will tightly bound your thesis and will also help your examiner or reader to feel motivated in reading your thesis, evaluating your PhD work. Don't bore the reader. That is most important advice. Example, in introduction, be brief. In conclusion, be broader, because that is something where you are generating the insights, you are extending the recommendations based on your scientific investigation. So a PhD thesis is not just a document, it is a map of an intellectual journey, marking the trails blazed, the dead ends encountered, and the peaks conquered, all while battling the serene of just one more experiment. So please try to appreciate your PhD thesis not just as a document, but quite an holistic product or the delivery to the intellectual community, where you are trying to set the patterns, trails, and some of the directions for the future research. There are some important guidelines on writing a good quality PhD thesis. The number one category of writing good quality PhD thesis is foundational principle. So this foundational principle is about before you even start, you should take care. So number one, originality is non-negotiable, not optional. So your PhD thesis should not just report an incremental work, and it should not be used as a synonyms for valuable. It must have significant impact for the society, industry, academia, and this is something where you must appreciate that your PhD thesis is not just the bunch of papers, it is by weight, it must have impact. Scope and focus, razor sharp precision. Ambitious is admirable, but unmanageable is a death sentence. Define your research questions with laser-like precision, because subsequently your research objective, scope of the research, your data collection, research methodology, and research method, everything will follow in line with the research question. So a narrow, deeply explored question is infinitely more valuable than too broad, a shallow one. Methodology, rigor beyond reproach. So good enough is your enemy. Your methodology must be defensible against the most skeptical reviewers. Why you have used this methodology? If you are using some multi-criteria decision-making technique, then why not structural equation modeling? Why not some other multi-criteria decision-making approach? why you have not adopted the optimization approach or evolutionary algorithm. So you have to put your proposition, the selection of the methodology in a very, very clear and sharp manner. Statistical significance is not substitute for meaningful results. You cannot just run away simply by proving that my results are statistically significant. It must have practical relevance and understand the limitations of your methods. The another important item within foundational principle is literature review. Synthesis, not the summary. I am not just reproducing what others have done. It must synthesize their views, put it in the right context, their criticisms in the area, their findings, and most importantly, what are the gaps they have highlighted, leading to what your research will really do in terms of addressing these research gaps and providing the new directions to the industry or society. The second domain is thesis development. This is ground middle. So here you have to prepare your PhD thesis with set of considerations. Number one, data analysis. It is insight, not just the output. You are just testing the hypothesis, producing the tables. You are putting your data in the form of charts. It is not enough. What insights you draw, data cannot speak. You have to infer the critical and important insight from your data. So don't drawn in data, extract meaningful insight, not just the descriptive statistics. And be ruthless in your interpretations. Avoid overstating your findings. So many times we get into the self-prophecy mode and we try to overstate our findings and project that this is something which is very unique and novel when it is more like a common sense. Writing, clarity, conciseness, and conviction are three important dimensions, three C's to be followed. So across your thesis, all the chapters must have clarity, conciseness, and the conviction. Your writing should be scalpel, not blunt instrument. Every word must serve a purpose, and you should not just use the jargons or make your document or thesis like a verbatism where a lot of words are there, but they are either contradicting, not providing the direction, or not bringing the clarity. Defense preparation, anticipate and destroy is the strategy. Your defense is not a presentation, it's a rigorous interrogation. Remember the word interrogation. Prepare for the toughest question, not the easiest one. And in terms of your methodology, in terms even your research question, why this research question, what is its importance, why this methodology, and how these conclusions are really counterintuitive in nature, and what is the generalizability of your conclusions are some of the important questions that you have to keep in mind. Supervisor relationship, it's a critical collaboration, strategic collaboration, engage in discussion, not passive acceptance. It's not like my supervisor told this and I will just follow. You are a scholar, you are a collaborator, and you must engage in the active discussion to see that you can unfold your research area effectively, and you and your supervisor can really target some of the novel and interesting areas where the research is really lacking. The third important dimension of your guideline for PhD thesis writing is the final submission, the moment of truth. You are now submitting your product. So revision, relentless refinement. Don't submit the first draft. As a rule of thumb, minimum 5 to 6 drafts are necessary before you really submit your final version of the PhD thesis. Revise, revise, and revise again. That is the mantra for making your PhD thesis the final product, better quality product. Seek feedback from multiple sources, including experts outside your field. Pay meticulous attention to detail, errors in grammar, spelling, formatting. Absolutely, these are unacceptable in the PhD thesis. Impact and significance beyond the thesis. Think about the implications of your research work beyond the academic sphere, how it can help society, real world problem, industry, and what is the broader field of knowledge it really captures. Dealing with rejection and criticism. Expect critique from your reviewer, from your examiner, and this critique should be taken in a positive, constructive way to improve your work. Resilience is a key. You bounce back. You receive the constructive comment, use it in the most positive way to improve your document. And PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. Let us try to see some of the most critical questions I am highlighting and try to see, does your PhD thesis addresses these critical questions or concerns? Number one, who are the beneficiaries of this research? What benefit can this PhD thesis or this study extends to the various stakeholders? Is it only for academia, or it has some relevance with real world, or it has some relevance for the industry, or it is just too myopic for the university context? Try to look at this. What are the ethical results that are not obvious and bring some vital insights which are new and novel for Indian context or your country context? And can this be extended to other organizations or other country? If yes, what are the precautions necessary? The third important concern, what is the importance of your research for international reader? So when you are publishing the research, publishing the paper, even though you have collected the data for your country or for your context, you must try to draw some meaningful generalizations, insights for the international readers. What are the implications for academia, industry, fellow researcher, policymakers that your PhD thesis must highlight very clearly? Does it meet international standards of doctoral work? Because today, one thesis will be evaluated by foreign examiner. If they receive the thesis, does it really meet the international standard of writing the PhD thesis in terms of its structure, in terms of its quality, in terms of its rigor? Will it stand the test of time? Is it really contemporary, or considering the futuristic trends in mind, or it is just digging out in the old practices? Has the thesis addressed the recent technological, policy, and practice advancements adequately? So you can see this couple of concerns very, very critically and see each of your chapter of the thesis in what way it is contributing in terms of these critical concerns. Otherwise, your PhD thesis will not receive much value in the eyes of examiner, in the eyes of society or nation. I am extending some guidelines in terms of top 10 common mistakes in writing PhD thesis, and we must try to avoid them. So number one, lack of clear research questions. You are not formulating your research questions critically, which basically sets the premise for your entire research work. A thesis that lacks the direction and fails to contribute meaningfully to the field has no value. Second, insufficient literature review. You have just compiled or reproduced the literature. You have not synthesized, appropriately examined, cross-examination is not done. Referring the academic literature, industry-based literature, consultancy reports published by various consulting agencies, maybe the reports published by policy-making firm or Niti Aayog, governments. You have not appropriately triangulated, cross-examined your literature, and this insufficient literature review is one of the reasons behind the failure of your PhD thesis or poor quality of your PhD. Weak methodological design. You have just selected the methodology to produce some result, but there is no absolute justification, and maybe your sample size is flawed or not adequate, flawed data collection, and these are some of the reasons where your analysis will lose the credibility. Poor data analysis and interpretation. So there are misinterpretation of data, drawing unsupported conclusions, failing to acknowledge the limitations of the data and the consequence, a thesis that lacks credibility fails to provide meaningful insights. The fifth important thing is ineffective structuring and organization. If you do not present your information in an organized way or logical manner, it is highly illogical, then it is extremely difficult for the reader, examiner, reviewer to get the flow of your chapter, flow of your thesis, and inconsistent formatting really creates a kind of dissatisfaction in reading your PhD thesis. So a thesis that is difficult to read and understand, hindering the communication of research finding, faces severe consequences. Weak writing and language. The mistake is using unclear, ambiguous, or overly complex language. Sometimes you are using jargon. Scientific language must be straightforward. Technical language must be simple. It must convey the meaning as it intends to, and there is no scope for verbatism or using the jargons. So grammatical errors, poor sentence structure, excessive jargon, all not accepted. Consequence, thesis that is difficult to read and understand distracts the reader, and the credibility of the research comes to the stake. Seventh important dimension or the mistake is inadequate referencing and citation. So many a times this has been observed that you are not referring some of the classical papers even though they are old. You are not referring some of the papers published in the top-notch journals. Some of the papers which are touching some of the critical dimensions of your research, or some of the papers which are recently published, and you are not accommodating them to compare your results, to compare your claims, and this really creates a shallow version of your research, of your PhD thesis. So thesis fails to address key concerns and misses opportunities for improvement is really shallow in nature. So ignoring feedback is another one. Poor time management. So PhD you have to complete in a given time. It's a project, and if you fail to meet your timelines for the publication, for giving your registration seminar, maybe synopsis seminar, and the defense, then it is likely that your PhD completion time and thesis preparation time will get extended, and this results into low quality thesis. So increased stress, rust work, all this contributes to low quality thesis. And 10, lack of focus and scope creep, one of the most important dimensions in project management. So allowing the research to expand beyond its original scope. During your registration report seminar, you have declared the scope of your research, and now if you keep changing the scope frequently, then you may be ending altogether with a different kind of research compared to what you committed, and that makes the panel suspicious. So you are typically putting your PhD project into the unmanageable domain. A thesis that is too broad, lacks depth, and fails to provide a focused contribution to the field is absolutely of very, very poor quality. I would demonstrate the structure of a sample thesis to make you understand how a good quality thesis should look like. So, thesis typically includes your inner cover page, certificate signed by the supervisors, number pages with the as numbering, style adapted, acknowledgements, abstract, about 200 words, keywords, maximum 6. Table of content includes title and subtitle of all chapters, references, appendices, drawings, program listing, then nomenclature and abbreviations, alphabetic order followed by Greek symbols, superscript, subscripts, underlining considerations. So broadly, your structure of the thesis goes like this. Chapter 1 is introduction. Chapter 2, literature review and statement of problem. Chapter 3, research methodology, analytical modeling, employment of software packages, other computational algorithms, equipment design, experimental setup, simulation, experimental verification. So you are describing your research methodology as a part of chapter 3. Chapter 4, 5, and 6 are the real work of your PhD thesis and basically reports the critical analysis investigation on set of objectives which are being declared in the chapter 1. Then conclusions, concluding remark, scope for future work, and finally, you put all the references in a typical style, maybe the Harvard style, consistently followed, and the appendix, which may include the questionnaire, interview schedule, and all other supporting material to make your PhD thesis complete. So let us see a sample PhD thesis structure. It is the thesis on supply chain complexities for Indian mining and earth moving equipment manufacturing industry. This is the structure of the first page. You will write that this is submitted to the university or institute for the award of degree of Doctor of Philosophy by the name of the student under the guidance, logo of the university or institute, and then the month and year. This is the sample of approval Viva-voce board. They certify that the thesis titled this submitted by the candidate at the university for the award of doctoral philosophy is accepted and the student has successfully defended the thesis in the Viva-voce examination held. This is the certificate that is to be signed by supervisor and joint supervisor. It's a declaration by the candidate that he has conducted the work by practicing all the ethics as expected in scientific domain, and the work is original and all the data, whatever are used, are appropriately acknowledged. This is the acknowledgement by the student or the candidate where he acknowledges the support provided by the institute or university, support extended by the supervisor, support extended by the other faculty in the department or the university, industry, NGOs, government, or support extended by the various other bodies typically working in this domain, or maybe the international researchers in this area. Then you define the list of abbreviations. So your reader should not have absolutely any difficulty when the abbreviations are used across different chapters. Then list of figures. Easily, if a reader wants to refer a particular figure, then they can find out this from the list of figure and directly go to a particular page and refer that particular figure. Similarly, list of tables appropriately numbered. Table 2.1 means it is the first table in chapter 2. Table 2.2 is the second table in chapter 2. Similarly, table 4.10 is the 10th table in chapter 4, and so on. Then you are writing a very concise, comprehensive, impressive abstract where you are defining the purpose of the research, the methodology you have used, what kind of contributions you have made out of this research, who are the beneficiaries of this research, and typically what impact it has for the industry, society, academia, and what is the novelty involved in your research. If you look at the overall structure of your thesis, then the first is the title page. I have already shown. Approval of the Viva-voce board page, certificate, declaration, acknowledgement, list of abbreviation, list of figures, list of tables, abstract, contents. I have shown all these pages in full to give you the idea about the structure of the thesis. Then you begin with the chapter 1, that is the introduction, where you provide the background, why this area is important and what is happening. Typically, you try to explain the importance of the area with some of the recent statistics and happenings in the domain. And then you may like to provide some qualitative analysis using SWOT or Porter's framework or something. And then you present your motivations, research problem, objectives, and the organization of the thesis. Then chapter 2 is about declaring your research methodology, what kind of literature you have referred, then what is the data requirement, what kind of research method, technique with appropriate justification you will use, and what are the expected deliverables and outcomes from this research that becomes part of your research methodology. Everything should be provided with adequate justification. Chapter 3 is your research methodology. Chapter 2 is your literature review. Sometimes you may switch chapter 2 and 3. And chapter 3 is your research methodology. As I mentioned, you explain the research philosophy, research approach, research choice, population and sampling, everything in detail. Then chapter 4, 5, 6 typically addresses your different objectives with the declared methodology and gets into the detailed investigation of the issue. So for example, here, chapter 4 is analysis of supply chain complexity drivers for Indian mining equipment manufacturing companies. Chapter 5 is analysis of supply chain sustainability with supply chain complexity interrelationship study for Indian mining and earth moving machinery industry. And chapter 6, the investigation is done on supply chain performance metrics for Indian mining earth moving industry. So this addresses your unique objectives and makes the unique contributions, rigorous contributions. Each chapter is equivalent to one research paper in your domain. Chapter 7, here 4 objectives are addressed, analyzed, impact analysis of supply chain complexity, and finally, chapter 8, conclusions and future directions, where you are presenting the summary of your entire research, whatever the investigations you have done, the importance of the investigation, methodology used, and most importantly, what are the conclusions and insights you have derived, and what are the key recommendations you are extending to industry, society, academia, NGOs, and other bodies in this domain. So you are not only reporting your work and recommendations, but also as a part of chapter 8, you are extending the future directions to provide some thought for the future research in this area. And maybe the researcher in future can choose these gaps as their important research quotients, and they can build on this to contribute more in this particular domain. You highlight the implications, as I mentioned, and most importantly, you should not forget to highlight the limitations of your research scope of the future one. So no research is complete. You have to modestly admit what is the limitations in terms of the demography of the profile of the participants you have considered, what is the limitations of the data gathered, what is the limitations of your methodology, and in what way the future research can really expand the scope and address some critical and novel questions to further extend the research in this particular domain. Subsequently, you put all the references in alphabetic order. Usually, Harvard referencing style is mostly used, but there are different referencing styles you can certainly use. Appendix A, Appendix B, and Appendix C, you are putting your questionnaire or maybe the algorithm or the software code, whatever, you are putting it here. And this is used as the backup material for anyone who is referring your PhD thesis. So broadly, to conclude the key takeaways, writing thesis is an art. When there are scientific guidelines, there is a scope for innovation. You set the publication targets so that your PhD thesis start developing right from the day one. Prepare review paper, maintain regularity in your research writing habits, develop habit of self-reading, learn from your published paper because you are receiving many constructive comments, discuss every point with guide, supervisor, Keep focus and keep it simple. Make sure you stick to your subject and don't wander off. So your thesis should not go in 10 different directions. And if there is something interesting that you want to include, but which is of dubious relevance to the subject, you can use these as a footnote or appendices. So to conclude, in the grand library of human knowledge, a PhD thesis is a single, meticulously crafted volume hoping to whisper something new into the collective ear and paying it is not just an echo. The noise should be minimized, direction should be provided, and this is the most valuable document, meticulously crafted document. I hope this video would have helped you to appreciate how to write a good quality PhD thesis and what are the important considerations, what is the universally accepted structure of the thesis. About my university, Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya is the only university, first and only in the domain of transportation and logistics sector with a unique mandate to contribute in all the modes of transport, rail, road, aviation, water, ports and shipping, and university offers programs at all levels, undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD, executive training to enable nation's aspiration to reduce its logistics costs from 14% to 8%. Transportation sector, as we know, is a growth engine. Typically for India, it contributes roughly 6.3% of GDP, and university offers demand-driven curriculum with a focus on all modes of transport, cutting across all three dimensions: technology, that is infrastructure; management, that is services; and policy, that is regulation. In line with the vision of the university, industry driven, innovation led, Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya has collaborated with various leading industries such as Airbus, Nippon Koi, Siemens, Jacobs, Plaza India, Railtel, and others, really to see that the logistics and transportation sector receives the most qualified, highly skilled manpower and improve its competitiveness. Thank you for your interest in learning the various dimensions of faculty and student development. We will keep exploring more issues through this platform for the benefit of faculty, students, most critical entity in the higher education in India. Thank you very much.